Redemption in Tombstone. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of fiery orange and blood red, a fitting backdrop for the bloody showdown that had just transpired. John, his hand still hovering over the butt of his Colt Peacemaker, watched as Jack Dawson's lifeless body lay sprawled in the dust. The echoes of gunfire slowly faded, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to amplify the pounding of John's heart. A wave of exhaustion washed over him, the adrenaline that had fueled him through the duel receding like a tide. His knees buckled, and he sank onto a nearby crate, his gaze fixed on the fallen outlaw. Dawson's face, frozen in a mask of surprise and disbelief, was a mirror to the turmoil raging within John. He had won, just as he had vowed he would all those years ago when Dawson had left him for dead, a bullet lodged in his shoulder. But victory felt hollow, tainted by the lingering scent of gunsmoke and the grim reality of death. John and Dawson's feud was as old as the hills, a tangled tale of betrayal, revenge, and a stolen woman named Emily. Emily, with her fiery red hair and a spirit as wild as the West itself, had been the object of both men's affections. She had chosen John, a decision that had ignited a bitter rivalry between the two former friends. Dawson, consumed by jealousy and rage, had framed John for a crime he didn't commit, forcing him to flee town and leaving Emily vulnerable to Dawson's advances. John had eventually cleared his name, but by then, Emily had disappeared, leaving him with nothing but a burning desire for vengeance. He had spent years tracking Dawson, following his trail of destruction across the West. Now, their paths had finally converged in Tombstone, a town as unforgiving as the men who roamed its streets. John rose, his joints stiff and aching. He holstered his gun and knelt beside Dawson's body, a strange mix of emotion swirling within him. He felt no joy, no sense of triumph, only a weary acceptance of the inevitable. He closed Dawson's eyes, a gesture of respect for a fallen enemy, and then turned to leave. The street was still deserted, the townsfolk wisely choosing to stay indoors during the shootout. John didn't blame them. Gunfights were a common occurrence in Tombstone, a violent punctuation to the daily rhythm of life and death. He walked towards the livery stable, his boots kicking up small dust devils in the fading light. He needed to get out of town, to find a place where he could finally lay the ghosts of the past to rest. As he reached the stable, a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman with familiar fiery red hair. Emily. John's heart leaped in his chest. He hadn't seen her in years, had almost given up hope of ever finding her. She looked older, her face etched with lines of worry and hardship, but her eyes still held the same spark of defiance that had captivated him all those years ago. Emily, he breathed, his voice hoarse with emotion. She ran towards him, her arms outstretched. They collided in a fierce embrace, holding each other tightly as if to erase the years of separation and pain. "John," she whispered, her voice choked with tears. "I thought I'd lost you forever." He pulled back, his hands cupping her face. "I'm here now," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's over. Dawson is dead." A shadow passed over Emily's face. "I know," she said quietly. "I saw it all." John's heart sank. He had hoped to spare her the sight of the killing, but it seemed fate had other plans. "I'm so sorry, Emily," he said, his voice filled with remorse. "I didn't want you to see that." She shook her head. "It's not your fault, John." Dawson brought this upon himself. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history hanging heavy between them. "Come with me," John said, taking her hand. "Let's leave this town and start over. Somewhere new, where we can finally be at peace." Emily looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and trepidation. "Where would we go?" she asked. "It doesn't matter," he said. "As long as we're together." She nodded, a small smile gracing her lips. "Then let's go." They walked towards the stable, hand in hand, their silhouettes fading into the deepening twilight. As they left Tombstone behind, a new chapter began, a chapter filled with the promise of peace, love, and a future free from the shadows of the past. The journey was long and arduous, taking them through vast plains, across treacherous mountains, and into the heart of the untamed West. They faced dangers and hardships along the way, but their love for each other remained their constant compass, guiding them through the storms. They eventually settled in a small town nestled in a valley, a place where the pace of life was slower and the people were kinder. They built a home, a simple cabin with a porch overlooking a babbling brook. John found work as a ranch hand, while Emily tended to their small garden and filled their home with warmth and laughter. Life wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, a peaceful haven built on the ashes of their past. The memories of Tombstone and the feud that had consumed them faded into the background, replaced by the simple joys of their new life. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Emily turned to John, her eyes filled with love and gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly, "for giving me a second chance at happiness." John smiled, his heart overflowing with love for the woman who had brought light back into his life. "We gave each other a second chance, Emily," he said. "And together, we found our way home." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the valley, John and Emily sat in comfortable silence, their hands intertwined, their hearts filled with the quiet contentment of a love that had endured the trials of time and the darkness of the past. They had found their redemption, their peace, in the vast expanse of the Wild West, a land that had once threatened to tear them apart but had ultimately brought them together. If you are enjoying the Western Echoes, Cowboy Tales Unleashed channel, hit the subscribe button for future posts.